the avoidant is back. After weeks or months of distance, withdrawal, or complete silence, they've reached out. They're testing the waters, checking if you're still available, seeing if the door they closed is still open. This moment is critical because how you respond will determine whether you repeat the same painful cycle or create the possibility for something different. There is only one right way to respond when an avoidant comes back, and it's not what most people do. Most people respond from their anxious attachment, their relief at being contacted, their hope that this time will be different. They make themselves immediately available. They accommodate the avoidance terms. They prioritize the avoidance comfort over their own needs. This response guarantees the cycle will repeat because it teaches the avoidant that their patterns have no real consequences. The only right way to respond is from your secure self, the part of you that values yourself enough to have standards, the part that learned from the pain of the previous cycle, the part that refuses to participate in dynamics that don't serve you. This response requires you to be honest about what you need, clear about what behaviors you will and won't accept, and willing to walk away if the avoidant isn't ready to show up differently. The right response isn't about punishing the avoidant or playing games. It's about respecting yourself enough to require more than breadcrumbs, more than temporary returns followed by inevitable withdrawal, more than the illusion of connection without the substance. Assess before you engage. The first step in the only right way to respond is not responding immediately. When the avoidant reaches out, your instinct might be to reply right away out of relief, anxiety, or hope. Resist this instinct. Take time to assess what's actually happening before you engage. The avoidant coming back doesn't automatically mean anything has changed. It might mean they're lonely. It might mean they want validation. It might mean they're between other options and you're convenient. Or it might mean they've done genuine work and are ready to show up differently. You need time and space to figure out which scenario you're dealing with before you respond. The assessment includes examining the avoidance approach. How did they reach out? Was it a genuine acknowledgement of their behavior and its impact on you? Was it an apology that takes responsibility? Or was it a casual text acting like nothing happened? The quality of their reach out tells you volumes about their awareness and readiness for real change. Subscribe for psychology insights that help you navigate these complex dynamics with clarity and self-respect. An avoidant who reaches out with, "Hey, how have you been?" as if they didn't ghost you for months is not an avoidant who's done work. An avoidant who reaches out with acknowledgement of their patterns, genuine remorse, and clear statements about what they're doing differently is showing signs of actual growth. The assessment also means checking in with yourself before you respond. How do you feel about this person coming back into your life? Are you excited because you've missed them specifically, or are you just relieved to not be alone? Have you done your own work to understand why you accepted their patterns before? Are you prepared to have boundaries this time? Are you willing to walk away if they're not ready to meet your needs? If you haven't done this internal work, you're not ready to engage with them regardless of what work they've done. The only right way to respond starts with you being grounded in your own worth and clear about your requirements for relationship. Respond from security, not scarcity. When you do respond, it must come from a secure place inside you, not from anxious fear that they'll leave again if you don't accommodate them. A secure response acknowledges their reach out without immediately rewarding it with your full availability and trust. It might sound like, "I appreciate you reaching out. I need to understand what's different before we reconnect." What work have you done on your patterns since we last spoke? This response is honest, direct, and boundaried. It doesn't punish the avoidant, but it also doesn't pretend that time apart erased the pain their patterns caused, or that their return automatically restores the relationship to its previous state. Responding from security means you're not afraid of their potential withdrawal. You're communicating that your availability is not guaranteed just because they decided to come back. You have standards now. You have requirements. You're willing to explore reconnection, but only if there's evidence of real change, not just temporary good behavior designed to secure your presence before patterns resume. This security comes from knowing your worth isn't dependent on this person wanting you. You're not responding from the belief that this is your only chance at connection. You're responding from the knowledge that you deserve someone who can show up consistently. And if this avoidant isn't that person, you'll be okay. The secure response also includes being honest about what you need to feel safe reconnecting. You might need to see evidence of therapy or personal growth work. You might need them to articulate what they learned during the time apart. You might need a period of slow rebuilding rather than jumping back into where you left off. Whatever your needs are, a secure response states them clearly without apologizing for having needs. If the avoidant is genuinely different, they'll be able to meet these needs. If they're not ready, they'll balk at requirements and try to negotiate you back down to accepting their patterns. Their response to your boundaries tells you everything you need to know about whether reconnection is wise. Require evidence, not promises. The only right way to respond when an avoidant comes back is to require evidence of change, not just promises of change. Avoidants are often good at saying what you want to hear when they want access to you. They'll promise to be more available, to communicate better, to work on their patterns. But promises without evidence are manipulation designed to get you to drop your guard. You need to see actual behavioral change over time before you trust that anything is different. This means the reconnection happens slowly, with you observing their consistency before you reinvest emotionally. Evidence of change looks like the avoidant having done actual therapeutic work on their attachment patterns. They should be able to talk about what they learned about themselves, what childhood wounds they've started healing, what triggers they're aware of. They should have language for their patterns that shows self-awareness. Evidence also looks like changed behavior sustained over weeks and months, not just days. The avoidant who is consistent for 3 weeks and then disappears hasn't changed. The avoidant who maintains presence, communication, and emotional availability for 3 months or more is showing evidence of real transformation. Requiring evidence also means you're watching how the avoidant handles difficulty as you reconnect. When conflict arises, do they withdraw or do they stay present? When vulnerability feels uncomfortable, do they run or do they push through? When you express needs, do they accommodate or do they make you feel like you're asking for too much? The avoidance behavior under stress reveals whether their patterns have actually shifted or whether they've just been on their best behavior during the easy early phase of reconnection. Don't confuse the honeymoon phase of their return with genuine change. Real change reveals itself when things get difficult and the avoidant chooses to stay present anyway. Maintain your independence. Even as you explore reconnection, the only right way to respond requires maintaining the independence and full life you built while they were gone. Do not reorganize your life around the avoidance return. Do not drop the friends, hobbies, routines, or growth practices you developed during their absence. Your life became full without them, and that fullness needs to continue whether they're present or not. This isn't about playing hard to get. This is about having genuine self-respect that recognizes your life doesn't revolve around someone who couldn't show up consistently before. Maintaining independence means you're not constantly available just because the avoidant decided to come back. You have your own schedule, your own priorities, your own commitments. The avoidant gets access to the space in your life that's appropriate for someone rebuilding trust, not the all-access pass they might have had before. This boundary protects you from falling back into the pattern where your life centers their needs and you lose yourself trying to accommodate their patterns. It also creates the healthy dynamic where the avoidant has to actually participate in your life rather than expecting you to simply fit into theirs when convenient. The independence also gives you perspective. When you maintain your own full life, you can see more clearly whether the avoidant is adding value or just taking up space. You can assess whether being in connection with them enhances your life or diminishes it. You're not so wrapped up in the relationship that you lose objectivity about whether it's actually working. This perspective is crucial because avoidants are skilled at creating just enough connection to keep you engaged while never quite offering enough to build something sustainable. Your maintained independence allows you to see this pattern and choose to disengage if necessary. Be willing to walk away. The most critical element of the only right way to respond is being genuinely willing to walk away if the avoidant isn't meeting your needs. This isn't a bluff or a manipulation tactic. This is a real boundary based on self-respect. If the avoidant is showing the same patterns, making the same excuses, unable or unwilling to do the work required for healthy relationship, you must be willing to choose yourself over the illusion of connection with them. This willingness to walk away is what gives your boundaries actual power. Without it, you're just making requests the avoidant can ignore because they know you'll stay regardless. Being willing to walk away means you've done the internal work to know you'll be okay without this person. You've grieved the relationship that could have been. You've accepted that this avoidant might never be capable of meeting your needs. You've built a life that's fulfilling without them. This foundation makes walking away possible because you're not walking away from your only source of happiness. You're walking away from a dynamic that doesn't serve you, and you're walking toward the possibility of finding someone who can actually show up for you in the ways you deserve. The willingness to walk away also changes the entire dynamic of reconnection. When the avoidant senses that you're genuinely prepared to leave if they can't show up differently, they have to make a real choice. They can either do the work required to keep you in their life, or they can run their patterns and lose you. This clarity is what creates the possibility for change. Avoidants who know you'll stay, regardless of their behavior, have no motivation to change. Avoidants who know they'll lose you if they don't change have to confront whether their patterns are more important than the relationship. Some will choose their patterns. That's information you need. But some will choose the relationship and do the hard work of transformation. Those are the ones worth reconnecting with. Communicate your terms clearly. The only right way to respond includes being explicitly clear about your terms for reconnection. Don't be vague about what you need. Don't hint or hope the avoidant will figure it out. State your requirements directly and unapologetically. This might sound like, I'm open to rebuilding connection, but I need consistency. That means regular communication, following through on plans, and being honest when you're feeling overwhelmed rather than disappearing. I need to see this sustained for at least 3 months before I can trust that things are different. If you can't commit to that, I understand, but I won't be available for a connection that looks like what we had before. Clear communication of your terms gives the avoidant the information they need to make an informed choice. They know what you require. They know what success looks like. They can decide if they're capable of meeting those requirements or if they're not ready. This clarity is respectful to both of you. It prevents the avoidant from thinking they can slide back into the old dynamic, and it prevents you from being disappointed when they inevitably run patterns you never explicitly said were unacceptable. Your terms create a new container for the relationship that doesn't allow the old patterns to function. Communicating your terms also includes being clear about consequences if those terms aren't met. This isn't about threatening the avoidant. This is about having integrity with yourself. If you say you need consistency and you get inconsistency, what will you do? You need to know the answer to this question before you communicate your terms, and you need to follow through when boundaries are crossed. If your consequence is that you'll disengage completely, say that. If your consequence is that you'll scale back your investment, say that. Then actually do it when necessary. Your boundaries only exist if you enforce them, and the avoidant needs to learn that you mean what you say. Watch for pattern repetition. As you navigate reconnection, stay vigilantly aware of whether old patterns are repeating. Avoidants often have a temporary period of good behavior when they return, then gradually slide back into their familiar patterns once they feel secure that you're not going anywhere. You need to be watching for this slide and willing to address it immediately rather than hoping it will correct itself. Pattern repetition might look like initial consistency that gradually becomes sporadic, emotional availability that slowly closes back down, presence that turns into withdrawal when real intimacy develops. Watching for patterns means you're paying attention to your own feelings as much as the avoidance behavior. How do you feel in this reconnection? Are you anxious again, waiting for the other shoe to drop? Are you walking on eggshells, managing your needs to avoid triggering their withdrawal? Are you feeling dismissed, unseen, or like you're doing all the work again? Your emotional experience is data about whether the dynamic has actually changed. If you're feeling the same way you felt before, the patterns haven't changed even if the avoidant surface behavior looks different. Pattern repetition also includes watching for how the avoidant handles your boundaries. Do they respect your needs, or do they slowly try to erode your boundaries through small encroachments? Do they honor your request for time to rebuild trust, or do they push for immediate return to full intimacy? Do they accept your need for evidence of change, or do they make you feel like you're being unfair for not just trusting them? The avoidant who's genuinely changed will respect your boundaries because they understand they're necessary for rebuilding trust. The avoidant who hasn't changed will see your boundaries as obstacles to overcome so they can get back to the dynamic where they had all the power and control. Trust your gut above their words. Throughout this process of responding to the avoidant's return, trust your intuition above their words. Your gut knows things your mind wants to rationalize away. If something feels off, it probably is. If you feel like you're being manipulated back into the old dynamic despite their promises of change, you probably are. If you feel anxious, uncertain, or unsafe even while the avoidant is saying all the right things, that feeling is information. Don't override your intuition because you want to believe they've changed. Believe your felt sense of whether this reconnection feels genuinely different or like the same dynamic with better marketing. Trusting your gut means being honest with yourself about red flags. The avoidant who love bombs you when they return but can't sustain consistency. The avoidant who makes grand promises but can't articulate what work they've actually done. The avoidant who wants you back but on their terms, expecting you to simply accept their limitations without requiring real change. Your intuition will notice these patterns even when your hope wants to ignore them. Listen to the discomfort, the doubt, the small voice saying, "This doesn't feel right." That voice is trying to protect you from repeating a painful cycle. Trusting your gut also means giving yourself permission to change your mind. You might initially decide to give reconnection a chance, then realize after some time that the patterns haven't actually changed. It's okay to reassess. It's okay to decide that what you're seeing doesn't match what you need. It's okay to disengage even after you said you'd try. Your yes to reconnection wasn't a binding contract. It was a provisional agreement based on the avoidant demonstrating real change. If that change isn't materializing, you're allowed to choose yourself and walk away. The only right way to respond to an avoidance return includes staying responsive to your own needs and boundaries throughout the process, not just at the beginning. The ultimate truth about responding. The only right way to respond when an avoidant comes back is to respond to reality, not potential. Don't respond to who they might become with therapy. Don't respond to who they promise they'll be. Respond to who they're actually showing themselves to be right now through their consistent actions over time. If they've done genuine work and are showing up differently, you'll be able to see it clearly in their behavior. If they haven't changed, you'll see that too if you're willing to look honestly. The right response requires you to be grounded enough in your own worth that you can see reality clearly without the distortion of hope, loneliness, or anxious attachment telling you to accept less than you deserve. You respond by valuing yourself enough to require real change, by being willing to walk away if that change isn't present, and by building a life so full that, whether this avoidant can show up for you or not, you'll be okay.